Now people can see it. Yeah. So again, for the explanation, we are going for the data which is in one dimensional. Later then I'll show you how to do the same thing in two-dimensional data. Now just imagine we have some points on the x-axis, and what do we have to do? We have to cluster them into different number of clusters. Now as the name suggests, k means clustering. It means you have to provide the value of k, or the number of clusters that you want to make. For now we are giving the value of k is equal to 3. How exactly we find out the value of k is one more topic which I'll explain you later. But currently just imagine that the answer is the value of k that we took is 3. Now what exactly happens is we have these data points which are like completely random, no labeling and all, that what does data resembles. What we're gonna do, we're gonna make into clusters. Now this is the obvious cluster. Like if you can see the model, you can see that this particular is a one cluster, this particular is one cluster, this particular is one cluster. So yeah, with an eye we can make the clustering. This is the obvious cluster. Now how exactly we're going to do using k-means clustering? What exactly we do is go. So the first thing that we do is, because we specify the value of k is 3, it means we are going to make 3 clusters. So what we're going to do with the first step is we have to specify 3 random points. Anywhere in the whole x-axis we have to provide 3 random points, which will be the starting of your clustering. Now just imagine this blue color, green color and yellow color is, or orange, whatever color. So these 3 points are going to be the 3 random points that you have generated. Now these 3 random points can be generated anywhere in this, anywhere in the x-axis. It's not dependent like you have to spread it here only, completely random. Now after the things have been populated, like 3 random points have been generated, now what you have to do, you have to get the for each and every data point that you have on x-axis, this particular one, this particular one, this particular one, you have to find the distance between all the data points and the random points that you have generated. So for this particular point you have to find the distance between this point and this blue cluster, this point and this green cluster, this point and this yellow cluster. So if I go and do that, from the blue we got the distance, from green we got the distance, and from the orange we got the distance. After getting distance from everyone, you'll get to know to which cluster this particular point is closest to. So you can see that this particular point is closest to the blue one. So this particular point will be assigned to the blue cluster. So this particular point is assigned to the blue cluster. The same thing we'll do for all the other points. So for this one, you can find the distance between green, blue and yellow. So if we'll do the same thing, green, blue and yellow, green, blue and, where's the step? Green, blue and yellow. You can see it's closest to green and it's farther to yellow. So it's been assigned to green. At this point, more closer to yellow, so it's been assigned to yellow. And all the points which are there will be assigned to yellow. Okay, so this is your this is your first step cluster, or the first iteration of the cluster. Now what you do, you have to consider all the 3 clusters. Now this is the first iteration cluster. This cluster has not been completed yet. This is the first iteration cluster. Now consider this cluster, the blue one, green one and the yellow one. What you have to do is, for the points that you have to find the median. Okay, for here you can consider the median as a mode also. In 2D you have to consider median. Here you can consider it as a mode also, because it's a one-dimensional data. So what you have to do is, for all the points, find a mode. Where is the mode, or an average? So for this particular 2 points, the average will be in between somewhere. For this particular 2 points, the average will be somewhere here. And these all 4 points, the average will be somewhere here. So if you can see the points, so the mean you found out for this cluster is here, this cluster is here, this cluster is here. Now what we're going to do, we're going to repeat the same thing that we did from the first time. For each and every point, you have to find the distance between all the three different mean of the clusters. So for this blue color one, which is in the first iteration it is blue, so we'll do the same thing again. We found the distance between the blue one, the green one, and the yellow one. Again we found out that it's closest to the blue one, so assign to blue. This one, we'll try for the blue one, green one, and the yellow one. Again, it's closest to blue, so it will be there. So we'll do the same thing again. And what happened is, even after the second iteration, the cluster remained exactly what it is. The first step, the cluster became the stage of the cluster that was there, the first step, it exactly stays in the second iteration. It means that's the final answer your machine is telling you, that the machine thinks that is the best output. Let me see if so the machine thinks this is the best output that you can get. Now, is it the best output? Absolutely not, because what we saw is this is one cluster, this is one cluster, and this is one cluster. But what is the machine telling us? That these 2 points are one cluster, these 2 points are one cluster, and this all 4 points are the third cluster. Now, why this happened? This happened because of the randomness of the selection of the first initial cluster. Only because we have random points on the initial cluster, the model can go for a wrong distance for clustering the wrong things. How to overcome this? To overcome this, we don't stop with only one iteration. Like, okay, fine, this iteration, like this particular step has been done. Now we're gonna do the same thing again. We'll take the same initial data set again without clustering. We're gonna again randomly put 3 points on the scale, and this time again 3 points are completely random. It can be placed anywhere, not the exact same position which they are placed in the previous time. This time it's gonna be randomly, but on the other places. And we do the same thing again. And what exactly we try to find out? We try to find out their variance, like how much variance they are. Like in this particular case, you can see the variance of blue is really less, the variance of green is really less as compared to the variance of yellow or orange, whatever the color is. So you can see the total variation is not equal or not balanced. Now we'll do the same thing, like exactly the same thing, but this time 3 random points on the different position. Now we'll do the same thing from this particular data point. We'll find the distance between blue, green, and yellow. For this one also, for this one also, for this one, like everyone, you found the distance between all the 3 points, and then you assign it to the respective clusters. Now, when the cluster has been assigned, what you do? Next step, you find the mean. You found the mean. Now, what exactly you do after the mean? Go to the previous step again. Find the distance between the first point from all the first point or all the points to the mean of the cluster. Again, do the same thing and assign it to the respective cluster with which they are closest to. And then after this thing has been done, we'll see the variance. Now, in this particular step, the model is telling that this is the best fit model. Now you can see this one is what we wanted. Like in the first time, what we saw is this only. So this one is the best fit model that this particular model is telling. Now we can see the variance, that all the colors have equal amount of variance in the equal amount of distribution in the answer. It means their variance is good enough. Now again we'll do it because now we know that this is the best thing that we want. The machine doesn't know. The machine should know that this is the best one. So it will do the same iteration thingy again. Like again it will take the random points and again do the k-means clustering and again get the variance, and then after 2 or 3 points, like in this particular example, we took 3 attempts, and then the machine saw the second attempt has the better variance because the class distribution is way better than compared to anyone. So the second cluster is the best cluster that you can get. So this is how k-means algorithm works. Now, how exactly we can figure out the value of k? For that, we have one more step which is known as elbow method. And how elbow method works, I'll tell you. As I've told you, the variance and what you find is the distance between the point and the mean of the point, like mean of the centroid or the cluster, what you can say. Like from this particular position, you find the distance. Using this distance only, we're gonna find the elbow method. I'll tell you later like how exactly elbow method works. But before that, let's see how exactly K-means algorithm works on 2D data. Like 1D data, you exactly understood how it works. So it's kind of similar to 2D data. For 2D data, the only thing which is difference is there we use the main. Here we use the centroids because we are on a plane. So to make circular clusters, use centroids. Now, again, this is our data points. No one knows why exactly they are used, like what are all these things. They're just on the x-axis and y-axis. What they are, height, weight, age, whatever, the machine doesn't care. Just gonna take care how much they're similar to each other. So again, 3 random points on the axis or on the plane, anywhere in the place. So we have 3 random points in the plane. What we're gonna do, we're gonna find out the distance of each and every data point from the initial cluster. And what exact distance that we take? It is the Euclidean distance. Now it's not handwritten that you have to take Euclidean distance only. You can take Manhattan distance, you can take cosine distance, sine distance, but what the machine does is it takes the Euclidean distance. And I guess you all know what is Euclidean distance. This is the Pythagoras theorem, the world famous Pythagoras theorem. The distance will be the difference of x coordinate plus difference of y coordinate. Now you get a distance and the point will be assigned to that particular cluster with which it's closest to. So for the first iteration, you can see this is the first iteration. Like these points are belong to the green one and blue one, this one to the green and this one to the yellow. Now what we're going to do for the second step, we'll take the cluster and we'll find the centroid. We'll take this point and find the centroid. We'll take these points and we'll find a centroid for their centroid. Now the centroid has been found out. You can see the centroid has been found out. What we're going to do now, again the exact same thing, finding the distance from each and every data point to the centroid of the clusters now. Because last time it was the initial cluster, now we have the centroid of the cluster. Now this point distance to this point, and this point distance to this point, this point distance to this point. Which one it's closest to? The blue one. Similarly for all the 4, it's going to be the same. The only different thing that you'll find out in this step will be this particular point. In the first step, this particular point was assigned in the yellow category. The second step, will it gonna assign to the second category, like yellow category again. So we'll find the distance between this point to green one, this point to yellow one, this one to blue one. Which one it is closest to? It is closest to the green one. So in the next iteration, this particular data point changed its cluster from the yellow one to the green one. So the next step what will happen is this particular point is now in the green cluster. Now what you're going to do? The same thing again. Same thing again. Find the cluster, find the centroid, and then find the distance from all the data points to all the centroid of the clusters. Now if we'll do the same thing again, you can see the centroid will be somewhere here. For this it's going to be somewhere here, and for this it's going to be somewhere here. So if now you're going to do the same thing, the places or the data points will not change now. Like this particular point will stay in the yellow one only. All the points in the green one will stay in the green one only. All the points in the blue one will stay in the blue one only. It means from the last step, when you came in this step, the points didn't change. Neither a single point changed. It tells the machine that now if you're going to do the iteration again and again and again, nothing's going to change because the position has been fixed now. The previous step what happened is, like in the first step, if I will go to the first step, what happened? The first step what happened? That we have some points. It has been clusterized, like it has been assigned to a cluster, and when after the centroid has been found, we found the distance again, and the points changed the cluster. So what is that? So till the time that points are changing the cluster, you're going to continue this iteration. And when the moment comes when the position of the cluster or the data points in the cluster didn't change at all, it exactly remains the same what it was in the previous step. At that very moment, we're going to stop the model, telling that there's no use of finding any, like even if you continue this, like even after continuing this particular step, you got the data point here, you got the centroid here, you got the centroid here, you got the centroid here. You found out distance, it is exactly the same. Now if you're going to continue the same thing again, you'll again get the same centroid because the data point hasn't been changed. You'll again get the same centroid. We'll go to the distance, you'll again get the same condition, and this will be like an infinite loop which will never stop. So the moment previous one is similar to the last one, we'll stop the iteration. And you can see this is the cluster that you wanted. Now again the same thing that happened in the first 1D diagram, that the best fit model was considered some wrong stuff because of the starting points, like this was the best fit model which machine told for the first one. The same thing can happen in this one also, because of the randomness of the point, randomness of the initial point, it can happen. So what we do is the model trains itself again and again and find the final variance, like for which step or for the which model the variance is the best, or the class distribution is balanced. The one which is the most balanced one will be the answer. What if the distance is exactly the same? Okay, let's take two portions. Sorry, I didn't see the motion. So what if the distance is exactly the same? So if the distance is exactly the same, the first thing is, it rarely happens that the distance is exactly the same. If it does, you're gonna randomly check any of the model, like any of the data point, and assign like any of the initial cluster and assign it to that, because it's not gonna affect the model in the next iteration. If it belongs to any other data point, it's gonna jump out. So there's no big deal in that. So if it's exactly the same, it's gonna be in the same, like you can just randomly check one. Does the k equal to the number of points of iteration? No. K, it's completely dependent upon, it depends on two or three things. The first thing is, if you know how many clusters that you want in your data. If your data demands like you have to divide this particular whole mess into 3 different clusters, then that's the value of k, that you know which exact number you want to divide it to. If you don't know, then you take one step which is known as an elbow method to find out which one is the best value of k. So we'll go for the best value of k, like how exactly we define the best value of k. Let's get the picture of elbow method. So if I'll show you this particular graph now for a moment. Now this thing has been done. What we do is, for each and every iteration, we take different values of k. How exactly do we do? So imagine for the first iteration, like for the first training, we took the value of k as 1. For the second one, we took the value of k as 2. For the third one, we took the value of k as 3. And till that place you wanted to check it to. Now this is the first prerequisite that you want to do for checking the value of k. Now if I'll try to start paint, so this is paint. I will tell you paint. So imagine this is a point, this is all your, where is the big brush? So these are all your points. Okay, and this one is your centroid. Like just imagine we have different data points, or different clusters. This one is one cluster. Okay, and you have, okay, the centroid looks a bit off, so I'll take the centroid somewhere here. So this is a centroid, let's forget this one. So this is a centroid. Now there is something which is known as WCSS. Now WCSS, the full form is sum of squares. What is WC? Okay, forgot. Hey, let me check 2 minutes. I always forget stuff. WCSS. Okay, sorry. So WCSS stands for within cluster sum of squares. So what exactly does it mean? So first of all, you have to find out the sum of squares. But within the cluster, so within a single cluster, you have to find out the sum of squares. What exactly we do? So for each and every point which is there in the cluster, we found a distance between their median or centroid, whatever you can say, like centroid, and find the distance. Like for the first point, what is the distance between the first point and the centroid? And so you will get this as a distance. You will take the square of that, like you can take term A, square of that, plus the second point, their distance and the sum and their square. So you will take A2, their square, plus you will do the same thing for each and every one. Okay, and you'll get one proper answer, which will be the within centroid sum of squares. Now, what exactly we do? You can imagine if we have so many points and we have only one value of k. The value of k is 1. So the within centroid sum of squares will be really high, because we are trying to spread, like we'll try to, wait, let me just clear all the things so that I can explain properly. So if we have only one cluster, like we're trying to place it into a single cluster, the value of WCSS is going to be really, really high, because we have lots of points. Like, so we have lots of points. But what we did is we have only one value or the one centroid. So the distance will be really, really high, or the WCSS is going to be really, really high. Now if we have 2, it will decrease. We have 3, it will further decrease. We'll have 4, it will further decrease. So what will be the best condition when WCSS is 0? That's not the best condition. That's the end condition when WCSS is 0. It means when there is no distance between the points and their centroid. And when that condition will happen, only that the condition will happen only that time when the number of cluster is equal to the number of data points that you have. It means, if I'll show you in this example, how many number of data points we had? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So they're like completely 14 points. We clustered it into 3 clusters. We'll increase the number of clusters, the value of k will, the value of WCSS will decrease. What if we have 14 different clusters? So all the data point will be specified into their different clusters. Because we have 14 different clusters, so it's possible to classify all the 14 points into one different cluster. It means all the data points will have their own cluster. At that very time, the value of k will be, the value of WCSS will be 0. So WCSS can reach 0. So if we plot a point of that, like what is the value of WCSS when the number of clusters increase, you can see you'll feel this kind of graph. When the value of k is low, so when the value of k is really, really low, the value of WCSS is really high. When you start decreasing, when you start increasing the value of k, the value of WCSS will start decreasing, and it will eventually go to 0 when the value of k will be equal to the value of the number of data points that you have in your whole data set. Now, what exactly you have to find in this? We have to find an elbow point. What is an elbow point? An elbow point tells you where exactly there is a sharp turn in the graph. After that, the WCSS change is really, really subtle. Now you can see from 1 to 2, there is a sharp like deviation. Like the value of WCSS became from 25,000 to somewhere like 10,000. Huge difference. Now from 2 to 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can see there's a huge difference. From 10,000 it became to like 5 or even less. Now from 5 you can see the changes of WCSS is really subtle. Like it's not as steep as it was there from the previous time. So this will be our best fit value of k. This is what you called an elbow point. and this is what we call an elbow method. You just have to find the elbow in the graph, where after that point you have a really subtle change in WCSS. We don't go for the 0 because it will eventually lead to 0. We will need the best one, which is the elbow point. Now I guess you know what exactly elbow point is. Now how to find the elbow method. So you have to find the value of k using elbow method. If you have any doubt in the concept, you can ask now. How do we plot? We'll plot in the code. I'll tell you how to plot in the code also. Don't worry. Any other question related to this concept? Okay. So we'll go towards the code. Where's the code? Now, again, I don't think we have to explain you this. Exactly the same. When you use NumPy and Pandas, we use the SQL dataset library to import load iris. I guess till now you got completely frustrated with the iris dataset, because for all the examples I'm using the iris dataset, but it's the best example you can get. So we imported the k-means from sklearn.cluster package, and we use matplotlib to plot some graph just to show you. Now what we do is we load the dataset using load iris function. We got the data into iris. Now we have to make it into a data frame. Now x is equal to p.data frame iris.data, y is equal to p.data frame iris.target. So x will have the data and y will have the target. Now if you remember last time what we used to do, p.data frame iris.data columns is equal to this much and blah 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 stuff to make it look like a whole data set. We didn't do it here. The thing is, just to show you that even though we don't specify the columns here, we can do it like explicitly also, because if we'll print x here, like let me run this code. Now you can see this particular data graph. It's a data point, but we do not have the columns, because what we used to do, we used to like give a comma, columns is equal to sepal and sepal width, petal and petal width. If we don't do it, you can just write it here also, like x dot, because this is the data frame. Now x dot columns provide the data frame. So if we'll execute it, you get the same data set but with the columns. So this is one more way in which you can specify the column. Just want to show you, that's why I did this. So the same thing we did, we made the data set. Now we take some of the attributes of the data set. Now out of sepal length, sepal width, petal length and petal width, we'll just plot some graphs, and we're going to use k-means clustering to cluster the graph together. So the first graph is sepal length and sepal width. So this one is a sepal length and sepal width, and depending upon the sepal length and sepal width, it's been divided into the target class. And you know this particular data set has 3 target class: Virginica, versicolor and setosa. Now what I've told you, in any supervised learning algorithm, it doesn't care what is the output, like what is the target class, what is the feature, it's just gonna make the clusters. So the only thing that you have to consider is 3, that there are 3 different features. Now this time you know that there are 3 different features. The next class we'll see, we don't even know that how many different features we want. So what we have is a graph showing the petal length and petal width, and depending on the petal length and petal width, you have the classification of the classification of the flowers. Like red red resembles one type of flower, blue resembles one type of flower, and black resembles one type of flower. Now we'll plot the same graph, but this time it's gonna be petal length and petal width. This time it was sepal length and sepal width. It's gonna be petal length and petal width. Now we can see that if we are plotting a graph of petal length versus petal width, the clustering is way more clear. Like you can see, this is one kind of flower, this is second kind of flower, and this is third kind of flower. The first in the first diagram, you can see it's a bit messed up. Like, okay, yellow is red is completely isolated, but blue and black are completely submerged into one another. And this one, it's like you can easily find out red as a separate one. Blue and black are still a bit submerged, but it's fine. You can find a in between line, but in this it's not possible. So just imagine we do not know. Like we figure out, like we knew that we had three we had three different clusters. Feature names. What exactly do you mean by feature names? Next, we can give feature names. Yeah, you can give feature names, but as I told you, it's not necessary. Yeah, it's not feature names you can give. But the only thing is, yeah, you can give like x of x in columns is equal to x dot features, df dot feature names. So the thing is, you will see the whole point. If when I'll explain you the whole code, you'll see that we haven't used the feature names at all. Even if we haven't done anything here, x dot columns, you haven't even done it, completely fine. The model doesn't care because the model doesn't care of the labelings. Now, just imagine we do not know the number of clusters that we want to make. Actually, we know it's 3, but what if we don't know? For that, we're going to do the elbow method. The elbow method, what I told you, we're going to try and find the clusters for different values of k. So if now what we're doing is for we're going to find the value of k. Let's say we're going to find the number of WCSs for the value of k oscillating from 1 to 10. So we'll go for the value of k as 1, find the WCSS, value of k is 2, then find the WCSS and go till 10. So what we did is we took one list, an empty list, to find the WCSS value. Now we took KRNG, it means K range, and it's the range between 1 to 10. So it will go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, because it excludes the last one. So for k in KRNG, it means the value of k will take from 1, 2, 3, 4 till 9. Now km is equal to k means this is the way we initialize the model. Now I guess till now you have completely understood how exactly we initialize the model. You just write the name and make an object and use the function fit. So k means an n cluster specifies the value of k that you want. So n cluster is equal to k. We fit the model and the model has been fit. Now what we need? We need the WCSS, or the within centroid or the within cluster sum of squares. Sum of squares. So to get that, there is a predefined function which is known as inertia. So if you write km.inertia, it will return you the exact sum of squared error. The within within cluster sum of squared error, you will get it. So what we are doing is, for each and every value of k, we are getting the km.inertia and we are appending it to the list. So if I'll show you the list, SSE. So for each and every value of k, which is 1 till 9, you're getting the value of the WCSS. Now you can see when the value of k is 1, it was 681. The value of k is 2, it was 152, and it started decreasing. If you increase the range from range from what 10 to 20, like take it 20, you can see the value is decreasing and it will continue to decrease till the time you give the number of the number of k equal to the number of clusters that you're making. Now what we're going to do, we're going to just plot it. And how exactly we plot the graph? It looks really bad, so let's keep it 10 only, because in this one you have to expand the graph to even see what exactly the number you want. So make it 10 for now. Now you can see the graph properly. Now we got the SSE, which is the sum of errors. Is that WC? Yes, that is WCSS value. To find the WCSS, you do not have to go and put your own function of finding the distance and getting the square. Km.inertia gives you the exact value which you want. Okay, just better. Let's just keep this here. Nah, no problem. Keep it here. Okay. Now what you're gonna do? You're gonna plot it. After plotting, what I have told you, to find the point after which the slope, the changes in WCSS becomes really subtle. So you can see from 1 to 2 there's a huge change, 2 to 3 there's a huge change, after 3 the changes becomes really subtle. So what will be the value of k? It was 3. So even though we knew the first time that the value of k was 3, even though we didn't know, the algo method is telling us the value of k is 3, or the best value of clustering will be 3. We don't do that. It cannot, because the range is 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a whole number. And you cannot specify a cluster as 2.5. Either there's going to be one cluster or two clusters. There is no 2.5 clusters. So the graph has been plotted. We got the value of k as 3. In range of 20 we got 2.5 because of the scaling. We got 2.5 because the scale was telling it to be 2.5. It doesn't mean that the value we got as the range is 2.5, because if I'll put the value of k as 2.5 or something, it's not gonna accept it. You can only imagine, like, there's no possibility of any cluster, like any fractional cluster. So the value is here. We got the value of k as 3. Now what you're gonna do? You're gonna use the k-means function to make an object. K cluster is equal to 3. We fit the model, and then we put we print the labels. Now we can see the labels which has been printed for the value of x. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do the exact same printing that we did here, but this time for the first graph, this is the real one. It means we are providing the petal length and the petal width. The color map is the target, or the exact value which we had, which is the first one. This one, y column is target, or the y target one. The second that we are printing, is the color map of k-means. K-means dot labels. It means the answer that the model gives. So the answer that the model gave. Now you can see the real and the k-means, they are quite similar. You have some kind of error. It's completely fine that you'll have errors. Now there's one small thing that you will notice in k-means and the real clustering is that real there is a kind of an overlapping in the centers, but in k-means it makes kind of a circular cluster, like it tends to make a circular cluster instead of overlapping cluster. As you can see here, there's a huge overlapping here at this black points, complete black and blue, changed. Okay, the thing is, this is a random colors, so it doesn't care that which exact color they're specifying it to. Just gonna make the clusters. If I specify the exact cluster color, that this should be red, this should be blue, this should be black, because here I'm not specifying the exact color names. I'm just putting a color map, and color map takes the number of mapping that you want to be. I want 3, which is the target cluster, so it made it a 3. Here also we're gonna have 3 different colors, 0, 2 and 1. So it's gonna map it to 0, 2 and 1. So it's gonna just make the clusters. It's not telling that this one is this blue point or this one is that black point. It's just making the different clusters. That's why there's a difference in the color. There's a chance that I'll run it again and now red will be somewhere here. Let's try if it changes. What I changed? Now you can see this time it became blue, blue and black, black. So it's completely random. So you can see the real are a bit overlapping. This is the k-means output, completely fine. There are small chances of errors, completely fine. This is k-means. Now, what if we are trying to put the value of the real one and the k-means for sepal length and sepal width? As I've shown you, this is the classification, like this is the distribution for sepal length and sepal width. This is the distribution for petal length and petal width. Applying k-means here is really, really easy. You applied k-means, the answer you got is like 99% accurate. Applying the k-means here, it's gonna be really difficult because this particular portion, you can see this particular portion in the real one, it's really, really clustered with each other, like completely submerged with each other. In k-means, it's trying to make a circle. There's one thing which k-means does is tries to make a circle. So that's why you can see these are more closer to each other and these are closer to each other. There will be really, really small outliers. Here it's completely what you can see. Good. So if we have this kind of data, we don't generally go for k-means cluster. We go for DB-scan or a hierarchical cluster. So we'll learn about them in later classes. But if you know that the clusters is gonna be circular and oval in shape, or there's a high probability that they are closer in circular shape, we'll go for k-means. So we applied k-means here. Accuracy score is not here. Okay, sorry, I didn't include the folder. So import scalar dot cs, sorry, from import what did I type? Sorry, what is that yet? So okay, the folder. Now the accuracy of k-means is 89% because you can see there is a big of overlapping. So accuracy of k-means is okay, kind of fine, no problem in that. But if there's a huge overlapping, we don't generally go for k-means. There you can see here also there is some overlapping here, but k-means are telling that there's not that much of overlapping, so that's why the accuracy is not more than 90%. So yeah, this is what k-means it is. If you have any doubt, you can ask. Let me slide it here. Now to decide that we should use k-means. Again, it completely depends upon how much amount of information that you have about the data that you are using. If you know that your data will have what circular clusters, you're gonna go for k-means. If you know that your data has what density clusters, like there has a huge density here and there, how will I know it's circular? There's no answer for that, because when you're so there's completely two situations when you're gonna make a model. Either you're using doing a machine learning project, or either you're working in a company. So if you're working in a project, like you're working for a project, you'll know what kind of data that you're making. You'll see the answers that okay, this is 3 clusters that you want to make. If it's direct, yeah, you can use scatterplot. Yeah, you can use scatterplot only when you know that there are 3 clusters, or there are different clusters. What if the answer that you got, let me show you, is remove this column. This is what you get. when you have no idea, this particular example, you had the idea of the classification, that there are 3 clusters. You got this particular answer. What can you do in this? There's no possibility that you can find the number of clusters in this particular output. So for that, you need to have an idea of what exact kind of data that you're using for. If you're working for a machine learning, like if you're working for a company, then you'll get to know, you'll have a feeling that the data that you're using will have a circular cluster or will have a density based cluster. You'll get that feeling only to know the exact kind of data that you're gonna use. There's no exactly written that you can cluster the data. And if you know that exact clustering, there's no point in clustering, because if you already know the cluster, there's no point in clustering. The example I showed you here, the cluster has been already done. You're not doing anything new. The clustering has already been done. Now, I only took this example to show you that how exactly it differentiates from the real one to the one made by the model. So there's one thing we will find out. You'll never go and find out the accuracy of a clustering model. Okay, k-means.cluster has a function cluster.score. You'll not find it in DB-scan or hierarchical scan, because we don't try to find out the accuracy, because there is no exact right answer. In exactly clustering situations, you do not know the features. So there is no right answer. No one knows that in which cluster they are belong to, or the dataset belongs to. The machine is telling that, okay, this cluster looks similar to the other one, so it belongs to that. Finding how many clusters to use. We just distributing the clusters, like we have different points and we're just distributing it to clusters. Like we have an image of fruits, random fruits, banana, orange, pineapple, everything. We gave the data points as a data point into the machine. Now we want the machine to cluster them out. Like these are all bananas, these are all apples, these are all grapes. You need the model to do that, only this. Now, if you know that we have only 3 kinds of fruit, fine enough. Tell your model that there are exactly 3 kinds of fruits, fine. But what if you do not know how many kinds of fruit you have? You got a salad, but you have no idea how many kinds of fruit you have in that salad. Then you have to go for either the elbow thingy or exactly numbers. And now it completely again depends on the shape of clusters, circular or density. We use k-means for categorical data only. And first of all, what exactly categorical data you want? You mean? I didn't understand. I understood about that, but what exact category or continuous data, I mean data used for decision tree, can we do in that k-means? I am not getting a question, bro. Like you want to implement k-means in decision trees, like in decision tree kind of data? Well, it can work, but you will never get your accuracy, that how accurate your model is. And there's a difference between classifying stuff and clustering stuff. The data that we use there is classification, that we try to classify your objects into different categories. Here it's clustering. You have no idea that the particular point belongs to that clusters or not. And if you have any idea that okay, this particular object belongs to that cluster only, it's no longer a cluster. It's this no longer a cluster problem. It's a classification problem. That you know the classes, you just know to classify it. So it's a classification. Then it's better to go for classification. Clustering is you do not know in which cluster it's going to belong to. We have to make the clusters. Then we're going to go for clustering algorithms. If we're going to do the other way around, maybe it will work, maybe it will not. No one knows. Cool. Any other questions? So let's wrap up this class today. So I'll share the Jupyter notebook in the group, and I guess today is the last day for submission of the first project. So please do it before 9. Till now I don't know how many I've given it. Let's see. It's open. Let's refresh it. Okay. So till now only 5 people have submitted the project out of how many? Out of 21. Okay, one is me. So out of 20, I have only 5, which is 25%. I hope that till 9 o'clock everyone will just give it. Nah, I don't teach. I just teach it only because for fun. This is the only class I take. Cool. So yeah, it's last till 9 only. Maybe I'll forget, so maybe it will get extended till 11 o'clock or something. So just it's better to do it before 9. Just upload it. Even if you couldn't complete it, it's fine. Just write that how much you did, how much you didn't. Just show the in the box. Just write that okay, you haven't completed the project. Just write how much you have done, how much you didn't, and what exactly you're gonna do, and upload the project. Later you can change the project and complete it. There's no problem in that. But just submit, and don't submit a blank paper. Why not teach advanced ML for fun? Because I teach normal ML for fun because I know it. I don't teach advanced ML because I don't know it. Advanced ML is something that you need to give a time on. I don't have that much of grasp in advanced ML. The questions that you're asking, I am able to answer it because I have a good enough grip in basic ML or the model deployment. In advanced ML, like reinforcement one or the deep learning one, I didn't have that much of grasp. So that's it. If I start teaching, I'll be limited to just the bookish knowledge or the things that I've read, the things that you see in the book. If you go a bit outside that particular thing, I'll be gone. Not a single answer will be coming out of my mouth. So that's why. The moment I'll complete the studies of advanced ML, then I'll teach it. Don't worry. Okay then. Bye bye. Did I forget anything? Nah. So, bye bye then. Okay, Vignesh is typing something. I didn't refer to any book. Being honest, I didn't refer to any book because most of the book are really costly. Or if you're gonna use a PDF, we don't open it only. So I never went to any book. If you're gonna ask any online course, that I can tell you. Advanced conceptuals. There's a book from O'Reilly. I don't exactly remember the name. The author name is O'Reilly. Don't worry. In the group, I'll post some books which I'll find good. I guess I have some PDF. I'll find one and I'll post it, don't worry. But the thing is, the only time you read a book is when it's a hard copy. You don't go and read a 500 or 600 pages book in a PDF. At least I don't do that. I cannot. And buying a book of ML, it's gonna be like 1,000 rupees, something like that. Yeah, you can do that. So it's upon you. You can use Kindle if you want. Okay then. Bye bye.